Three in one.
No, thank you so much for that warm introduction. Um, so I consider myself to be a dance artist, and what that means is what that means to me is that I don't pigeonhole myself as just a choreographer or just a teacher of dance. I also like to record dance on film, in photography and in video, or I say dance film. So one of the things that I experimented with in about, I guess it's been about 12 years ago, was shooting photography. And I started photographing the dancers that I was dancing with in the company that I was dancing with, as a way to sort of preserve a memory and to know that at some point I was going to have a time in my life where I wasn't going to be around those people. And I wanted to encapsulate these experiences in a loving and nurturing way, not just for my future self, but for the rest of the world. And in those moments, I became more in touch with the present moment and more aware of my present moment, because you have to as a photographer. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about photography in the moment. That's what I've titled this piece, this presentation. And I'm going to share my screen. Could you enable me as a screen share when you get a second? Um, so,
So we have people that will be on that right now. They'll get it done immediately.
okay. So as soon as I can share my screen, I will. I'll start the visual presentation of all of this. But one of the things I'm just curious about, if some of you could pipe in. Um, I'm aware that I'm with an audience of arts and medicine people, and I would love to know more. Just a quick soundbite of what that means. I have my own idea, but I want to know what it means to you, so I can know who I'm speaking with. So if anybody pipe in, unmute, and then I can share my screen. Anybody want to talk about? Yes.
Hi,
Hi.
hi. My name's Eki Archibong, and I run a social enterprise here. I'm in Bushy, Hertfordshire in the UK, and I run a social enterprise where initially we were really focusing on the idea of, using creativity and supporting people who are trying to access the industry. But through experience, we found that a lot of people come with, from different sorts of backgrounds, from with different situations and issues. And excuse me. And we now sort of decided to look at how we could do this a little bit more holistically. And then we're working with a lot of people with mild mental health issues predominantly, some people with learning disabilities. But I think this is the time where, and not just now, even more so now, where it's really, really prevalent that there is so much benefit in creativity, in the arts, crafts, whatever it is that you're doing that's creative. There's so much benefit through art therapy, one route, but also through empowering people to understand the fact that you can actually use creativity to support yourself, to support your own well-being. And apart from being enjoyable, I personally have lived experience of going through the whole process. And I don't see art as the product. I see art as the process. So for me, there's arts, medicine, health, self-healing, well-being, you know, it, there's that link. There's a strong link. And guess what? The whole wide world is seeing that link right now, you know, pre, inside lockdown and post lockdown. It's a thing.
You're so inspiring to me. Thank you for sharing and letting me know what
Thank
you
you.
do. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that one of the things I'm going to be showing and demonstrating is, maybe not demonstrating so much, but trying to argue, is that this sense of creativity isn't about the product the product itself is the actual journey, is the actual working towards the thing. So I feel really empowered by being in the room with you, to know that we can kind of go forward. And now I know where you guys are all at, where you
Yeah.
women and men are all at. We can go forward. So am I able to share my screen yet? No, not yet. Is anyone able
You
to
can,
do that?
no, you can share your screen. You are a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
No, it's not letting me share. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay. Let's see, maybe I can, now I'm the co-host. Okay, here we
Lovely.
go. Let's
Right.
do this. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing today for the next maybe we have about a half an hour. What I'm going to be doing is giving you sort of an introduction to how you can introduce people to photography and what it can be and what it can offer. So this is why I sort of call it photography in the moment. And first, I want to just talk about what photography is, kind of what we were just talking about. It's a voice. It's a way, just like any other art form, to interpret the psychological and the physical. And it's a great way for people who are struggling to really use their voice and use words to articulate something that's abstract, maybe. I have a couple of studies here that I wanted to just bring up, and some quick quotes with citations. If you guys want to take a screenshot of these, they can be really interesting. Just the title alone sort of gets right at what we were just talking about. More specifically, there's an evidence that engagement with artistic activities, either as an observer or of the creative efforts or of others as initiator of one's own efforts, can enhance one's moods, emotions, physiological parameters, all those things. This one was from an article I read in the New York Times based on a study. And when we go out and we photograph, we're exercising, we're moving around, we're engaging with the world. And this is, there's evidence or findings that seem to be suggesting that it actually changes your DNA. So it changes your lifestyle, but it can change your DNA. So maybe an interesting read for you also, if you want to take a screenshot of this one, or just write it down. And then this is, I'm throwing in little photographs that I've taken. This is one with me and my mother. My mother had a stroke in 2014. And I found the process of photography to be really empowering for me, to capture the moments that could be fleeting between my mother and I. And this particular study was actually titled Daily Photography Improves Well-Being. And they found that it improves it through this idea of self-care, community interaction, and that potential for reminiscence. This part right here is the part that I want to focus a lot on. Whoops, let me go back. Taking a moment to be mindful and looking for something different or unusual in the day were seen as positive being benefits of the practice. And I think that's really what gets at the heart of this practice of being in the moment with photography. That sense of gratitude, that sense of sort of taking in the world. And then there's an account of someone from this same study. It basically says it encourages people to engage with the world around them and helps them to feel connected to everything, whatever that means to you. You know, there's all sorts of ways of feeling connected, I think. There's that study. So just a quick history. Originally, photography was about documenting. So painters would take a photograph of a landscape or a person and then try to repaint it. Eventually, it became this way of sort of advocating or social justice. This is a photograph by Julia Margaret Cameron during the Dust Bowl in the history of the United States. Another great photographer starting to become a little bit more like a form of art, where Henri Cartier-Bresson sat in one place, stood in one place, and saw the space around him, composed it in his eye, composed it in the camera, and waited. He would wait sometimes for an hour just for the right thing to come along. So photography develops as war journalism as well. They find smaller cameras and they can move them around. Then it becomes, we have color photography. And what happens with this photographer in particular is that he starts taking photos of what we might call the mundane, the sort of everyday, the boring, the drab. And he, in my observation, he really highlights and elevates the mundane. So what he did was he used this really rich, saturated color film that would bring out the colors really vibrantly. And then he just went around and photographed, tricycles, tires, all sorts of things. So another great street photographer that I love. So here's what's happening today. We're going to talk about your phone camera and what you can do with phone cameras. Very simple. We don't need any fancy gear for any of this photography stuff. And I'm going to kind of give you an idea of how. And then we'll skip ahead and we'll learn about composition. We'll talk about these big three things that we talk about in photography that we may actually skip over these since we're short on time, because these are kind of what the professional photography course would look like. And so here we go. The single most important component of a camera is the 12 inches behind it. It's all about how you're experiencing the moment, I believe, and that's the way I teach it. The best camera, one of the best quotes I've ever heard is, the best camera is the one that you have with you. So if you have a camera from 2000 and it flips open and you have to press a button, that's the best camera, and you can create whatever you need to. But a lot of us have these smartphones now, and we can create some really beautiful images with them. Photograph is just capturing light. We're looking at how to chase light and where the most interesting light can be for the most part. We're going to skip right over these. Basically, we have three major things in photography. We have shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Shutter speed is how quick it's going to be. So if you're photographing like a child running, or if you're photographing dance like I do a lot of, or sports, you want a really fast shutter speed, so it'll catch it really quick, catch the motion and freeze it really quickly. The aperture has to do with depth of field. So if you have a really large aperture and you're the camera, my face is going to be in focus, but everything behind me is going to be out of focus. And then the opposite, if the aperture is really tiny, everything behind me is going to be in focus and my face is going to be in focus. So the whole composition is in focus. Consequently, with a smaller hole, you get less light. With a larger hole, you get more light. So just sort of ways you have to balance these three things. And then ISO is just the camera the film's sensitivity to light. Here's some quick little diagrams about what I just said means. So down here, we've got a really low shutter speed, and then a high shutter speed, you're freezing motion. And then here's our aperture. Got a large aperture, and you can see how this gets blurred out behind him, and then a very small aperture, and everything is in super tight focus. That's ideally how it goes. And then ISO, on a really bright day, you want to drop the ISO down. On a really dark, in a dark room or at night, you want to bump the ISO up. So those are some basic things about the technical world about photography. Just want to speed through them. Now let's talk about composition. So when we're telling a story, or when we're talking about something we're going through, or we're trying to articulate something, there are rules, and I really mean guides when I say rules. There are rules in photography and art that we can sometimes use to get that message or that voice to be a little more articulate, a little more clear. And one of those things is the rule of thirds. What the rule of thirds says is that if you place something, let me add this in, if you divide the composition into 9 segments, so there's 2 horizontal lines going across, 2 vertical lines going across, and sort of splitting center in both ways, wherever you place the thing you want us to look at, when you place the thing you want us to look at on either of these intersections, that's where the strongest part of your composition is going to be. So in this instance, I wanted you to see Jamie Ray, this dancer. I wanted you to see her eyes. I wanted to bring focus to her eyelashes and where she was looking. So I tried as best as I could to place her on this intersection. So the strength of the image draws your eyes a little bit more over there. If she was centered, we'd have a lot more dark space over here. And there, it wouldn't have as much, I think, wouldn't be as dynamic. That changes when we crop it to a square. That's a completely different rule. But generally, this is the rule of thirds, and this is the way we like to compose an image. If you start to look at old paintings old Renaissance paintings, or even paintings of today, you'll notice that a lot of the scene, the main part of the scene is happening in one of these intersections. Rule of odds basically says that if you're composing an image of and you're shooting 3 cups, 3 eggs, 3 people, it doesn't matter. You want there to be an odd number of people. Anytime you get above 5, our eyes start to not really notice the number 5 or higher. So it's generally just the rule of, it should be the rule of 3s, honestly. Sometimes if we start to get into 4, it doesn't have quite the punch. It doesn't have that same depth and storytelling and interplay that we get with something that's just an odd number. So, and then patterns. And patterns are interesting, but the most interesting thing about a pattern is the interruption of a pattern. So think about a wallpaper, a beautiful wallpaper on a beautiful wall. And there's no interruption except one tear on the right side. What sort of character comes out of it? What does that tell you about the room in general? What does that tell you about the people that live in the room, or the animals that live in the room, or the history of the room? So patterns are interesting, but in terms of photography and composing a visual image, the interesting thing about a pattern is the interruption of a pattern, for art's sake, for articulation's sake. Patterns are, without interruption, are really more in the field of design. If we're looking at like the design of the exterior of a building, or again, a wallpaper, or like the rugs behind me. Okay, so we also have lines, and I'm just going to pop all of these up. We have vertical lines, horizontal lines, and diagonal lines. And the way I want you to think about lines for this next 20 minutes or whatever is in terms of what we place and where our eyes sort of go. Where we place the things in the image and where our eyes go. So vertical leading lines can lead us to, for instance, this goat in the background that we're not really aware of. They can also be, if you think about it, if you look up at skyscrapers, those can be a sense of, vertical lines can be a sense of power, a sense of strength and superiority. Horizontal lines, personally, and I know a lot of other visual artists see it this way also, but horizontal lines can represent landscape. So we can almost imagine like this is the edge of a river, and then we have the water here, and then across we have the trees, and then the mountains, and then the sky, and then. So leading into depth. So this is what horizontal lines can do for us. More landscapey, but they can be used in all sorts of ways. And then diagonal lines. Diagonal lines can have a little bit more power, a little more strength, and can represent more, movement also pretty well. So here's the slide I actually spend a little more time on than I should, but I think it's important. So let's start with angles. So if you think about angles, when we're shooting, when we're taking a photograph, you have to really think about them in the real world sense. So when I talk about a low angle, that means you're looking up at something. The person taking the picture, the person looking, is looking up at something. Take a second just to think about the things in your life that you've had to do this to. And actually lift your chin to take in the whole thing. What sorts of things for you are conjured? Maybe statues on a pedestal. Maybe when you were a child, you looked up at your parents. Or just the embodying an animal, a pet that you love, looking up at you, right? All these things, right? If you're religious, maybe there's a spiritual relic that you look up at and you revere. So there's this sense of ascension that goes with it also. There's those things. So when you're composing an image and you're pointing the camera sort of on a diagonal up, it's really important to think about how you're representing the thing that you're photographing. So do you want to give power and strength to a spatula or a person or a dog, whatever? You can use this element, this compositional element, to show power. to give power to your subject. The opposite could be true for the high angle. This next one, looking down at something. What sorts of things do you look down at? Just the very opposite. We look down at our pets. We look down at our children and our nieces and nephews. We look down at the earth. So, you know, is there a way that we could even find a sense of reverence in looking down? But really just before even composing an image, sensing what it is in your body that you're feeling. So if I look down, what's going on in my body and how am I responding to it in my body? And the canted angle, real world, when things are canted, say we're on a ship and the ship starts to rock a little bit, it's not quite right. We're not really secure. If you've ever been in an earthquake, buildings don't look quite right. The ground starts to shift. Psychologically, this has a way of manipulating us into feeling that feeling of unease. Things aren't quite right. So again, a really great way if you know, I'm having a really hard time with something in my life or someone, I might want to express that by just doing this with the camera, just a little bit, just a little offset, so that now someone who looks at the image can say, okay, so there's something going on with this person. Let's investigate that for myself. It's not something that you need to really probe them with because it's their way of expressing, but it is an interesting way for the person to articulate what's happening. And then we have levels, low levels, mid-level, basically exactly what they say. So low level, you're down here next to the feet. Mid-level, you're sort of, and I'm talking about just photographing people in particular. Mid-level, you're at hips and above. And then high level, you're kind of just getting the shoulders and the head with a lot of negative space above the person. And then we have worm's eye, and worm's eye basically says that you flip the camera directly down. So it's pointing, its lens is looking directly up. It's as if you're laying on the floor looking at the stars, laying on the ground looking at the stars. And then bird's eye is the opposite. We're all really familiar with bird's eye, I think, these days because there's so much of it out there. But bird's eye is that grid view of the cityscape or the landscape. So, and then point of view is sort of the dog looking up at you, right? So here's some quick examples. This is the church that my father, who's deceased now, used to go to, and he loved this church, and I wanted to give it a sense of reverence, and also a sense of scale, because it's a bigger structure. In its history, it was the biggest structure in that entire area. And then here's a high angle picture of my friend's dog, and then a canted angle. Things weren't going right for my nephew. He was having a moment. He was a little upset, so I kind of wanted to play with what a canted angle might do for him and his mood. Don't worry, he was much better after I took the picture. And then we have a low angle. This is my sister's dog and I. A mid angle. I'm just talking about this as like a more of a portrait. Sorry, not angle, level. And this is my friend Bill when I was in New York a few weeks ago. And then the last thing I'll talk about, and there are many, just to say, is scale. And the reason I have this slide is because when we take a picture, when we photograph something, it's easy to capture the thing itself, but sometimes we can add a little character to, if we want to bring out the character of the subject that we're photographing, we can go in and we can actually walk and zoom in with our feet and get closer to something to show the wear and tear of something. For instance, this old truck, and show the personality and this old design of just these lines coming in and out, and these circles, and it gives a little bit more personality, a little bit more depth. This could even be a diptych. This could be next to this, and then we could have another detail of maybe this bucket or something behind it. So just going in and sort of spending time with the thing you're interested in. And it could even be yourself. So normally at this time, I ask people to get up and shoot. We usually have a longer period. But I am going to give you a moment, but we're not going to take that much time. I want you to take your phone cameras and think about think about, I'm gonna give you like 2 minutes. Think about these things that we just talked about, the angles, the vantage points, and all of those things, and just give yourself a second. So the instruction is to look around your space, walk around your space, and just be in that moment. And what I mean is open yourself to the sounds, open yourself to the textures, and notice what starts to draw your attention. You may not even have to walk around. You may just have to sit and then get up and walk to something to photograph it. But all I want you to do is I want you to take 2 photographs of the thing, whatever it is you're interested in. And start by taking a moment, 30 seconds, to just be in the space, listen to the sounds, feel the air on your skin, notice everything around you, and notice what you're drawn to and what you're interested in the room. And once you know what that is, once you feel what that is, go to it and take a photograph in the way you think it represents itself the best. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and then we're going to go. So I'm starting my clock right now. One minute warning. Okay, we're back. So did anybody have an interesting experience with those very simple instructions that they want to share, or a photograph that they'd like to share? Okay, so like anything, this takes practice. So normally I give people 7 minutes to do something, and that's not a lot of time. But one of the things I want to leave you with is, and we still have a few minutes, so I'm going to keep yammering a little bit. One of the things I want to leave you with is the idea that there is play in shooting, and play is where the creativity is. I think we have to kind of remember that that sense of getting back to being children and being in wonder of the world is really important, and I think it can be very very helpful to many people. So I'll do a quick talk about lighting, and basically just how simple. I didn't do anything special with this photograph. I put things in the window. I also like just set this thing up. I also put myself in the window, and just very simple things you can get with window light. And they're actually not terrible photos. They're pretty decent. And with the iPhone, you can also, I can't believe this is the first time I'm talking about this. You can also take the camera and click on it and scroll up and down to lower and increase the exposure. So if you find that it's a little overexposed, you just tap on it, open it up. There's a little sun that goes up and down, and you can play with that. But yeah, very simple things. If you want to photograph your mother or a loved one or a pet, you know, to get really nice soft lighting on them, just put them next to a window. One of the things about photography that I love is going into the mundane, the everyday. And this is a photographer named Uta Barth. Uta is German, and she photographs she has these amazing photographs of very simple everyday things. These are just curtains with the line of light sort of dancing along the curtain in this way. And then we have a hand in this other one. I just did a Google search of images and these came up, and these worked. And the characteristic that light can have also, right? All of these moments are based in, I'm imagining Uta Barth being really in that moment of investigating what's interesting to her and spending a moment. Maybe she may have moved something off the wall. She may have moved something away just to find the interesting pattern in this. And these are really compelling, simple images that we can all make on the little phones that we have. So let's go back to this. This is my phrase that I like to refer to sometimes. Compose, expose, then stop. Compose, maybe take a picture, maybe not. Expose, that means take a picture, and then stop. So is that really what you're going for? Is that really the angle that I want? Instead of continuing to take lots of shots of that one thing, maybe you want to get a little lower. Maybe you want to be eye level. Maybe you want to be in a little bit closer or further away. And noticing that the further you are away, the more you get into the shot. And how does that tell your story also? So, and then one of the last things I want to talk about and go through is these really incredible Nigerian photographers. I just want to give you a little teaser of all of them, or the select ones. Let's see if there we go. These are really beautiful artists. Very simple. I don't know anything about this artist. I don't know anything about Nigeria. I've never been there, but I'm getting a lot of information based on the interaction of these two. This may not be the representation of Nigeria, but it represents something that is familiar to me also, because this isn't the first time I've seen two men exchanging things between them and having some sort of transaction in a very precarious, to me, a very precarious way. These newspapers balanced on his head through a fence, So, and then this gentleman right here, sort of staring right at us. So what I like about this image is that it's universal. This photographer is giving us some insight into his world, but he's also demonstrating that, maybe inadvertently, that this can be a very common scenario. So let's move on to the next one. George Sodi. Is this? Yes. So what I love about his work is the way he plays with light. So where's the light coming from? It's coming from in front of him. It's actually pointing into the camera. But notice the things that he can do when you do that. You can light up certain objects. The light up of the water here in the water bottle, and then just highlighting a silhouette of a certain body, right? All these things are super interesting. And then this is a flash. Again, he's probably using a very high shutter speed, and he's got an on-camera flash that he's shooting with. And I love this image with the lines. We've got vertical lines going this way, vertical lines going this way, just a bunch of stuff happening here, so much information. It's just like, wow, I don't know what's going on. And then, but there's also this sense of order, like they've got this figured out, maybe they do. Yeah, another one. I'll show you one more and then I'll just move ahead. I'm not even going to try to say this person's name, but I do love the work very much. So this is a great example of getting low, getting low on someone's level. Think about what might happen if this photographer was standing. What makes this photograph so compelling for me is that the photographer became, yeah, exactly, like dropped down. He's squatting probably to get down to this level, to really have, now we're having a conversation, or a one-way conversation, but something is happening with this, right? So that's really important. One of the important things that I want to also emphasize in photography also. Do you want them to be eye level, or do you want them to be looking up or down, right? Just questions you might want to ask yourself. And then this last one I'll show you is, I love this photographer. A sense of scale. So now we're getting into, I would argue that this is a portrait. This is a portrait of a man. I don't know where he is, but he's in a field. Is it like these little buildings behind him? It could be a very different image now if we went eye level. So now the photographer is above him, and so that the top of his head is below these buildings and inside of this whole scene. If we went eye level, the top of this building might cut right behind him. So it'd be a very different thing. Instead, we get this round circular sort of embrace of this space around him, almost like he belongs there. Like he's a part of this, and that's okay. We're comfortable with that. Yeah. So another moment for you to take a screenshot if you like. These are all really equally incredible photographers. And if you want to get inspired by some of the folks in your own country, there they are. So just a last few things. The perspective is really important. So what is your perspective? Where are you relative to the thing you're photographing? And what are you? What's happening? What experience are you going through in your body? Because that ties into the next thing the next of the three that I like to talk about: emotion. What is this eliciting for you? And is it making you feel some way while you're photographing it? And then when you're done photographing it and you're done spending the time with it, has your state of mind changed? Has anything changed? And then editing. And editing is just about the last step. Now I have the image. Do I want to change it? Do I want to take the color out? Do I want to leave it in? Do I want to crop in so that I'm in one smaller spot? Or do I want to just leave it the way it is? All sorts of things that you can do. Another step to articulating what you want to say. And then I'll leave you with this. Well, actually, I'll leave you with another couple of quotes, but I'll start the coda by saying the camera is a fluid way of encountering that other reality, and that other reality is your reality, and it's my reality, and it's her reality, and his reality. Everybody is experiencing and creating a completely different reality. And the camera can be fluid in that sense. It can go anywhere. Good. It's not about succeeding. It's a joyful act. And it shouldn't be a wrestling match.
Thank you very much, Mr. Francisco Garciano, because we would love to ask you questions.
Sure.
So, and we're already in on your question and answer segment time. So I would also love you to take questions as you're showing us this quote. So please, if you have your questions, can you raise your hands, or can you just put your questions in the chat sections? And I might say the entire presentation about photography was really lovely, because I actually took some pictures and it's in the chat section right now. I took pictures of nature, right? There's a beautiful plant right in front of me, and I tried to capture. I'm sure it doesn't look artistic, but I did my best. I did my best, and I think what I liked about it was the idea of, you talked about emotions, and for me as I'm here, I feel like that plant is what's calming me. It's seeing something of nature and being able to connect with it and just feel at peace right now. It makes me feel comfortable in my own space. So that's what it meant to me when I took that picture.
That's so great. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really inspiring. Like, how does it feel? In a way, to help instruct how people, you know, can go about it so that they have those feelings. That's important too. Kind of knowing that, like you just said, like, I don't know if it's artistic or I don't know if it's great or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. You know, the point is about you having an experience with it. And, you know, by creating something, I think when we create things and we share them, we're also giving other people a chance to realize that they're not alone, and that other people may be having a similar experience to us. So let's see here. Okay.
Thank you. And I would like to know if any other person have a question. Does any other person have a question for Mr. Francisco Cassiano?
Can I say, it's me. I actually don't have a question. I just had, because I took part in that activity as well, but I found that, you know, because I really sort of don't understand, you talked about feelings, but I just felt, you know, how would I put, I felt on the spot, and that I needed to do something. I wanted to do it. So I wasn't flowing. I don't even know how to I wanted to do something. So I looked around. I've got my bin right in front of me at the moment, right here. And I was really trying to be creative. I was trying to be artistic. I wasn't letting it go. I wasn't letting it flow. I was trying really hard to get a really nice picture. And I suppose that has to do with being put on the spot. And maybe it was in a sort of a class or in a different kind of setting, I would have felt completely different. But I just thought I'd say that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it's when we're asked to create something, I feel like there's always a pressure on us to make something that we like and that we're proud of. So I appreciate that feedback. Normally we have a little bit more time, and I'm not you know, rushing through this, and I like to give people a little bit more space to feel that. But you know, now you have the instruction and you have the tools to maybe go out there and feel it and spend a little more time. That's a challenge for all of us. I really, truly believe, just being in the moment, shutting off the mind noise, shutting off the judgment. You know, it's not a wrestling match. It's not I need to make something great. Yeah, because that's not where the joy is. Someone, I saw a hand
Yes.
I'm also a photographer, and I like the exercise because I was in my room and I had to look around, and I was able to just make some nice images, things I never observed in my room. I was able to capture them, like just like the doors of my wardrobe form a mirror image. They look identical each side. So what I'm trying to say is that photography helps to strengthen our observational skills. And it just helps us to be more aware of the world around us and the beautiful things around us. So even not everybody has to be a professional at it. The fact that we can just shut down our thinking and just look around and observe, I think it's very therapeutic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your valuable input. That was beautiful. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for adding that.
All right. So, does any other person have a question for Mr. Francisco? All right. I think And that's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Francisco, because I did not expect such a detailed presentation of photography, and I feel like I'm an expert. Maybe not an expert exactly, but close to an expert, and I can help people understand the different angles and levels to take from now and what they should be focusing on. And it just made me realize that I only look at mindfulness from breathing, meditation. But now I just noticed that through photography, I can actually enjoy mindfulness and it can help my mental health. So thank you very much. I really appreciate this presentation.
100%.
You did a
Yes.
wonderful job.
Thank you so much.
Right. So now we'll be moving on to our next presenter for today. That's Mr. Roman Baka. I hope I got your name right. Okay, yes. Thank you. Right, so Mr. Roman Baka is a New Mexico native and is a classically trained ballet dancer and choreographer. And in 2001, recognizing his desire to defend the defenseless, he took a hiatus from dance and enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, serving as a machine gunner and fire team leader in Fallujah, Iraq, during the Iraq War. After the war, Mr. Baka returned to dance and co-founded Exit 12 Dance Company, which tells veterans stories choreographically to increase cross-cultural understanding and heal divisions. He has choreographed and championed dance works that explore the military and veteran experience and the impact of war on civilians and families. He also leads workshops and lectures at schools and universities and organizations and even veteran centers to inspire critical conversations about war through the power of dance. Mr. Baka was awarded a Fulbright to the Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance in London, UK, where he completed his MFA with merit in choreography. Outside of studies in London, Mr. Baka was on staff for the Soldiers Arts Academy (CIC) and provided production support to the critically acclaimed Play Soldier On's UK tour, including a 6-week one on the West End. Mr. Baka also served on the leadership team that delivered the first UK Veterans Art Festival along the 2019 UK Invictus Trials in Sheffield, UK, United Kingdom. He has also served as a panelist reviewing US-UK Fulbright candidates. I think Mr. Roman Baka is nervous or shy and he thinks we can do without this, but I think
Absolutely.
everyone deserves to hear this. So I will soon be done. But yes, you deserve this flattery. He has also served as a panelist reviewing US-UK Fulbright candidates and has served as a panelist for the National Endowment for the Arts Dance Panel 2020. Mr. Baka co-founded and directs Exit 12 Dance Company. Is a PhD candidate investigating the military human through the arts at York St. John University in the UK, an early career researcher at the Trinity Laban Conservatoire, and a junior research scientist with the USAF and USN Research Unit. So a round of applause for Mr. Roman Baka.
Thank you very much. I noticed as I was listening to that bio that my hair is really fuzzy today. I welcome everyone. My name is Roman Baka. Please forgive me if I get your name wrong. As Oyuwene, sorry. Onyinue?
You can say Onyi.
Onyi.
Yes.
As Onyi said, I am a PhD candidate currently. I direct a dance company. I'm currently in New Mexico in the southwest of the United States, where we're running a residency with veterans, military veterans and their families. So thank you for being here. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do, a little bit about how it connects to arts and health, and then lead you through a workshop example of some of the things we do with veterans and with other populations. This is me, like Cisco. I was a classical ballet dancer. I spent many years dancing in ballets such as the Nutcracker, Swan Lake, and Sleeping Beauty. But after a brief professional career, I felt that ballet wasn't doing enough to help those around me. I had a desire to serve. I had a desire to help. And so I thought back then, in my naive youth, that the easiest way and the most opportunistic way to gain those tools was to join the United States Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps in 2000, and my unit was sent in 2005 to fight in the US-led Iraq War in Fallujah. We spent our days, as you can see, driving in Humvees full of weapons and full of armed Marines. But one of the things we found as we were looking for bad guys is that there were more families and children in the areas that we were operating than bad guys. And so we made it our mission as well to see if we could positively impact the local people by handing out school supplies, soccer balls, food, and water when we were out on patrol. Just a couple of stats. In the US, mental health for veterans in particular, those who have served, is a very big problem. The suicide epidemic in the US in particular, amongst the veteran population, has risen dramatically from 2001, from the start of the US-led Afghanistan war to today. It hit a pinnacle of about 22 suicides a day and is now hovering at about 16.8. I also do some work with veterans in the United Kingdom, and they did a study a couple of years ago, the Ministry of Defense in the United Kingdom, that showed that neurotic disorders were the most prevalent disorders within the population of UK armed forces, and a large percentage of the population of UK armed forces had seen a mental health specialist in 2019, 2020. Now, this doesn't catalog the individuals who do not engage with mental health specialists, and they look for other ways to deal with the things that impact them from their service. Often when a veteran comes home, and I love this photo essay done by a buddy of mine, they have an issue separating from their military identity. And often in the early years of separation from the military, they keep a lot of the embodied training that comes across in their civilian actions. Many veterans, including myself, find themselves angry, easy to violence, depressed, anxious, very often hypervigilant. And like you saw on the previous slide, while mental health professionals are a good way to address some of those concerns, I would not make a mistake assuming that the population here on this call would agree that there are other ways to address mental health, with arts being a very interesting way to do it. When I got back, I was too dealing with anxiety, depression, anger, and my wife actually noticed this. It wasn't me. She sat me down and she said, I want to help you. If you could do anything in the world, what would you do? And I told her I'd start a dance company. And I think part of that answer was, one, it was really crazy. And so if she was going to leave, like, that might have been the catalyst that drove her out the door. But also, I saw value, and she saw value in me returning to the arts as a way to reconnect with others. And so she said, let's do it. So in 2007, we started Exit 12 Dance Company, and not long after starting it, we turned our choreographic lens particularly to the military experience and the experiences of war and the impacts of war on not just the soldier, but on the family, on the loved ones, on the people that support the soldier. And we started putting these stories on stage. This is from a ballet that I created from a particular incident that happened when we were on patrol in Fallujah. Now, when we were on patrol in our Humvees, loaded to the teeth with just about every weapon we could get our hands on, there was a certain rule of engagement when we came upon locals or other people. And this day, when we were on patrol, we were given the mission of stopping every car we came upon to search it for explosives. Now, there was intelligence in the area, or there were whispers that insurgents or bad guys were loading up cars with bombs and exploding them near Marine positions. And so this was a very important mission. On this day, we chased down this white car. It looked like a little, I don't know if you have like Opals or small Peugeots or like a Honda or a Toyota, really small car. It was a little white car. We stopped it. And our rules say that when we stop these vehicles, we're supposed to dispatch our security element so that they could make sure nothing goes wrong. And then me as the team leader was supposed to go and take the driver out of the car and have him stay where he was, walk over to the passenger side of the car and tell all of the individuals to get out of the car. And then I go back to the driver and have him open the door, the boot, the hood, and show me that there are no bombs in the vehicle, and then they're off on their way safely. So this day, we stopped this vehicle. I went over to the driver's side, escorted the driver out of the vehicle, told him where to stay where he was, went over to the other side, and I made the mistake of looking in the window. And what I saw was a young woman. She couldn't have been older than a teenager, wearing, as you see in the photo, one of the black full body abayas. And in her arms, she held a baby that couldn't have been more than 2 years old. Her eyes held the fear she must have felt seeing all of these Marines around her car with every weapon you can imagine. I was very conflicted at that moment, and I didn't know if I should follow the training I was given and take the woman and her baby out of the safety that the little bit of safety she had from the metal cage of the car, or to follow the rules and to keep going. This incident didn't sit well with me for a very long time. And so I put it on stage to start important conversations about how military individuals are often asked to do things that do not align with their morals, values, or humanity. This is a work we perform called Agrest and This Is War. It's set to 2 spoken word poems by a US Marine Iraq War veteran who saw a lot of fighting in the early years of the US-led Iraq War. He saw so much fighting and he was gone for so long that his wife left him while he was deployed, and he returned to an empty home, a broken home, and a lot of the invisible and physical injuries he was afflicted with in the war. The poem talks about those very hard things that the poet had to deal with. We choreographed 2 solos, as you see here, so that the movement could underline and amplify what he was trying to express in the poetry. As we were choreographing these things, we felt that it was important to create a participatory arts practice so that veterans could come in and experience what it was like to work with dance, poetry, choreography, and theater, and see if it could help them move forward from the war and progress positively in life. We started these workshops aimed at well-being within the veteran, self-identity, self-affirmation, resilience, regeneration, meaning making of what happened to them during their service, urging them to tell their stories and to remember the beauty and the importance of the everyday. as we went along, we found that while we were touching on each one of these bullet points, the best days were when a veteran went through our movement workshop, they would leave and say, wow, I did that. I moved, I danced, and I created. I wonder what else I can do. And that's what we want. We want them to be inspired to live their full life. These are a few veterans workshops that we've run in universities in the United States, also in medical centers, in VA medical centers. VA stands for Veterans Affairs in the United States. And we've worked with all ages and all populations. So you'll see if you look in the photos, we have some female veterans, we have some veterans from former wars that were long ago, like the US-led Vietnam War. And we have varied populations like special operations soldiers in the bottom left-hand photo that we've worked with in our workshops. Because of COVID, we moved a lot of our workshops online in what's called the Veteran Arts Workshop online portal. And through the portal, veterans were able to connect with other veterans and take classes in movement arts like painting, ceramics, some writing classes, mindfulness classes, yoga, and more. One of the things that I hope I can communicate is that even though we work within these very specific realms of dance and theater and poetry, I want to, like Cisco did, show you the diversity of what is possible through art. And this is a very poignant example that hits home. So this is my hometown of Albuquerque. In the past couple of years, they've seen a significant rise in not only homicides, but in violence perpetrated by police officers. A lot of individuals have died because of violence at the hands of other people. And this young lady in the upper left-hand corner is an example of that. Her name is Victoria. She was about 7 years old when the crime was perpetrated. She was murdered violently and horrifically by family members. And the scene after Victoria's murder was one that is indescribable because of the horrific nature of the crime. This is my cousin, my primo. He's a police officer in Albuquerque, and he was one of the first officers to respond and to lay eyes on the aftermath of little Victoria's murder. This incident and his witnessing of the aftermath of the incident has vexed him greatly. He has nightmares. He has dealt with mental health and psychological issues because of what he saw. And while he has gone the traditional route of talking to mental health professionals and seeking help within his department, one of the components that has helped him through this is art. So this is a digital painting that he drew, and it's of one of the dreams that he had of Victoria. And the way he describes this painting, as you can see, he's donned his police officer uniform, and in front of him are all of the bad people that he faces each and every day, and the dangers he faces each and every day as depicted by the shadows of hands. And behind him is little Victoria, urging him forward as if to say, you tried your best, but you have more work to do. It's stuff like this that helps my cousin move forward and move on and continue to serve in the way that he has chosen and protect those around him. This is a little quote that I happened upon, and I hope it resonates with you in particular, because I know that you are all arts and health professionals. And just for this, even though it says dance, and I'm positive you can read dance, I'm just going to change the word dance to art. Art has always held a fundamental place in all societies and cultures. It is a space of communion and a channel for connection to the self and others. Liberal capitalist Western societies don't have much space for ecstatic experience, and there is a real necessity for it. I've always seen theaters or clubs as sacred spiritual places rather than places of entertainment. To me, they are rare places of abandon where we can fully let go and soften the hard prism of the reality we get imposed. Art has also a therapeutic value. We live in times where people are being so disconnected from their own body and sensations that they become a stranger to their own vessel. Art allows you to befriend that vessel mindfully and facilitate a deep connection to the real self rather than to the adapted version of self. So while we have a robust menu that we utilize with workshop participants, I wanted to take you through one of our workshops so you can experience it and see what we do and why we do it, and then maybe ask questions as we go along. So the first thing, this is a writing and movement workshop that we do with veterans. We've done with civil defense and police. We've also done it with cancer survivors and substance abuse survivors and recovery victims. One of the things that we like to do is introduce a writing prompt first, because we know how intimidating dance and movement can be. But what we found is that if we start with writing, people are more apt to join in with the movement when they have something familiar to connect it to. And I'm kind of peeling back the curtain to show you the nuts and bolts behind the workshop. Not only so that you might grab some of this and use it in your own practice, or that it might inspire some of the things that you do already or that you will do in the future, connecting art with your practice and the people you work with. So the first thing we do is we introduce them to a poet. Usually I'll pick a poet that lived a long time ago so that they can see that the issue that they're dealing with is not a novel issue, and that they're not alone in dealing with that issue. I found that reading poetry from World War I connected me to the experience of serving in war and knowing that other people have done this throughout the years, and I wasn't alone facing the things and working through the things that challenged me. So I'd like to introduce you to Joseph Seaman Cotter Jr. Joseph Seaman Cotter Jr. lived in the South in the United States and had a rich tradition in his family of literature and poetry. It was so rich, and his parents inspired him so much to become a writer that he was accepted to university to do just that. Unfortunately, Joseph only spent 2 years in university developing tuberculosis and was sent home to hopefully recover from the disease. Having left university and having arrived back with his parents, Joseph continued to write and compiled one of his compilations of poetry that he published before he died at a young age in 1919. One of the major inspirations for Joseph's poetry was the seminal event of the time, or the Great War that was going on, that had started in 1914 and continued through most of Joseph's older life, short older life. As Joseph thought about the wars, he thought about particularly the Negro soldiers that served in the war and thought heavily about their plight. It was Joseph's theory that the Negro soldiers' greatest enemy was not Germany, but was, however, the racism and discrimination that they faced from not only the enemy, but the people they served beside. And I'm going to introduce you to a poem called A Prayer by Joseph Seaman Cotter. If I was working through with a group of veterans, I would use a poem that was specifically related to their experience, talking about the trenches, their challenges, and their hopes for the future. But because it's you all, I wanted to pick a poem that was more relatable to you, so you could see, so you could feel connected, and you could see how that connection is built. So we're just going to read the poem. As I lie in my bed, flat on my back, there passes across my ceiling an endless panorama of things. Quick steps of gay-voiced children, adolescence in its wondering silences, maid and man on a moonlit summer's eve, women in the holy glow of motherhood, old men gazing silently through the twilight into the beyond. Oh God, give me the words to make my dream children live. Then, like I'm going to do now, I would ask the participants for any reflections they had on the poem. So do you have any reflections on the poem? Maybe a phrase that stood out to you, or a concept or an idea, something that might have put a picture in your head, or something you just want to talk about from the poem?
Yes, I have something. So I saw dream children, and I was wondering, do they mean dreams that you want to give birth? Dream children. Okay, so do they mean dreams that you want to give birth to, or your children in the future?
So I think you bring up a good point. I think what Joseph is talking about in this poem, and I might be wrong, and you can definitely take the interpretation any way you like, but the way I feel it is that when he's talking about these dream children, he's talking about hope, right? He's talking about all of these wonderful things that he sees throughout the day, these children that are happy playing in the street, these teenagers that are just experiencing adulthood, these, a man and woman that might be in love, holding hands, walking through the moonlight, or mothers who are pregnant, who are just anticipating bringing a new life into the world. And I think he wanted more of that. And so his dream children are just, the goodness that he wants to see in the world. Any other reflections on the poem?
Thank you for that explanation. It was beautiful.
I've got one. First of all, just reading through the poem made me feel really warm and very nostalgic. But there was a sentence, I mean, I can't really remember it word for word, but at the very beginning, about there passes, let me just move this away. Flat on my back, there passes my ceiling an endless panorama of things. And it just took me back to New Year's Eve when I was quite young, when my mother, for some certain reason, told us that if we stood by the window just before New Year's, that, just at New Year, and you looked outside, you'd see all the old things that we'd thrown away and all the bad thoughts and everything that, all the stuff that we'd thrown away, you'd see everything going, moving backwards and going, staying in the old year. But this was the crunch. If you didn't see anything going, that means you hadn't been a good enough child that year, and you'd have to do better the year after. And that's what it reminded me of. But all in all, the poem actually made me feel really warm and nostalgic. And that sentence took me back.
I love your story. It made me nostalgic as well.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more reflection. It's okay, we can move on. So what I do next, so we've all read the poem together, we've had these reflections that further connect us to the poem. Then what I ask the participants to do is write a poem of their own. focusing on your dream children, the things you wish would come alive in the world. We don't actually have time to do a poem of your own. So we're going to kind of skip this part, but I'm going to tell you about why we do this. We found that veterans, and I'm sure you've found in your work that this applies to many other populations than just veterans, their stories need to be told. One veteran told us that you can't understand my pain until you hear my story. And so this is an easy way of introducing individuals to the concept of telling their story. It's a short and easy way because as they're writing, I'll scroll through the poem again so that if they want, they can just use the structure of the poem as the structure of their poem so that it's easier to write. Maybe they'll steal some words or some concepts and reflect their experience off of the words of the poem. But then I'll also give them leeway or permission to deviate from the poem. So if they want to write a paragraph, if they want to write a sentence, if they want to write a couple of sentences, rather than sticking to the format of the poem, that is totally okay too. I give them a time limit. And this is really important because if you just gave people time to write, it is unintentionally hard to get them started if they have no deadline. So I usually give them what feels like a short deadline. I usually give them like 7 minutes or 10 minutes to write their work. And usually participants will start writing right away because they have a stop point. I will check in often with the individuals that are writing and let them know how much time has transpired and how much is left. If we're in person, it's really hard to do with Zoom, but if we're in person, sometimes I'll walk around the room and just ask if someone needs help, if they look like they're struggling. Just the gesture of support encourages people to write more and encourages them to further participate and deeply participate in this exercise. Now, I'm giving you the wide breadth of things that I do. Almost always, we have a 100% participation in the writing exercise. Then, after the writing exercise, we will have people share. So they'll get up and they will talk, they will read what they've written. And then, like we did with Joseph Seaman Cotter's poem, we'll ask for reflections. What did you hear? And we pick those words specifically because we don't want people to be critical about the poem, but we want them to reflect on the poem. We want them to reflect on things that made them think about, things they heard that that resonated with them, to further encourage sharing. Usually if one person reads and one person reflects, it causes more people to want to share, which is what we want to do. We want to share experiences together. We want to build community. Then, after we've read and shared poems, we'll go to the next exercise. Now, we introduced the movement exercise. I hope your heart fluttered as mine did, because movement and dance is usually kind of scary. And if you tell people that you're going to find 3 words in the thing you just wrote, and you're going to put movement to them, they usually get kind of nervous. However, that's what we'll do. So we'll show this slide and we'll say the next thing we're going to do today is you're going to take your piece of writing and you're going to find 3 lines, 3 ideas, or 3 concepts in that piece of writing. And you're going to put movements to them, or gestures, or dance steps. It's up to you. It can be as simple or as complicated as you like. Now, if you can imagine you being in that position, you're probably feeling a little nervous, or maybe a lot nervous. And that's important because we want that adrenaline to start going a little bit to get people excited. It doesn't feel like excitement, but trust me, it is. Then we calm them down a bit by saying, but don't worry. We're going to go through an example to show you exactly what you're going to do. And then we go back to the Joseph Seaman Cotter poem. So we're going to go together through the example like I would do with workshop participants. So we're going to add movements and gestures to this poem. And we're just going to borrow ideas and we're going to move together. But before we do that, we need to warm up. So if you'll do this with me, I'm going to move my table back just so we have some room. And I'm sitting down, so don't worry about getting up. If you want to get up, you're more than welcome, but you can also do this sitting down. It's not hard. So if you'll just throw your arms out right in front of you and start to make little tiny circles and make circles in the other direction. Oh, nice job. Take them out to the side, little tiny circles to the side, and reverse the circles. And then take your right arm and reach as high as you can to the ceiling, stretching your arm and your shoulders and your torso. And take your left arm and stretch all the way to the ceiling like you're gonna touch the light fixture. Take both arms, stretch all the way to the ceiling. And then as you come down, I want you to shake. Usually the warm-ups are very, very simple, like that one, because we want people to start moving. We want to lead them in that movement. And then we want to do something silly, like the shake, just to make them feel as if it's fun. So now we go to the poem. The first section, as I lie flat on my back, there passes across my ceiling an endless panorama of things. So this is the movement that we're going to learn to this section that I created. As I lie flat on my back, you're just going to put your hands together and you're going to make like you're sleeping on your hands. Let's all do that together. You are all so good at this. And then take your right hand and you're just going to pretend like your hands are pushing as if swiping memories right and left on your ceiling as you're scrolling through them. Yeah? So pretty easy. Let's do that together. 1, 2, 3. As I lie flat on my back, there passes across my ceiling an endless panorama of things. Beautiful, beautiful. Good job. We'll go to the next section now. Quick steps of gay voiced children, adolescence in its wondering silences, maid and man on a moonlit summer's eve, women in the holy glow of motherhood. Now, as we talked before about this, these are all these wonderful things that are around him that either he remembers or that he wants to create or that exists. And so for Joseph, we're going to help him collect all of those things. And you're just going to take your right arm like you're collecting into your chest, and your left arm, you're going to collect some more, and your right arm, you're going to collect some more, and your left arm, you're going to collect some more. And then you're just going to hold them tight because you don't want them to disappear. Yeah? So let's do that together with the words. Quick steps of gay voiced children, adolescence in its wondering silences, maid and man on a moonlit summer's eve, woman in the holy glow of motherhood. You're just gonna hug right there, great. Last section. You all are doing so well. Old men gazing silently through the twilight into the beyond. Oh God, give me the words to make my dream children live. So with this, we're holding this and we're gonna gaze into the beyond, like we're putting our hands so we can see better right over our eyebrows. And then you're going to call with your arms and your head to the Creator. And you're just gonna feel all those things come alive. Fill yourself with all of that goodness, all of that love, all of that joy as your arms come down. So super simple. One more time. It's just the eyes on the brow. You're going to call to the Creator as if you're asking him to make all of those things alive. And then you're just going to feel all of that goodness, all of that love, and all of that joy as you open your arms. Super simple, super easy. Let's do that section with the words. Your hands are here from hugging all of those things in the section before, and you're gonna go. Old men gazing silently through the twilight into the beyond. Oh God, give me words to make my dream children live. Awesome. Now let's go back to the beginning, and we're gonna do it all together with the movement. Hope you're nice and warmed up. Here we go. As I lie flat on my back, there passes across my ceiling an endless panorama of things. Quick steps of gay-voiced children, adolescence in its wondering silences, maid and man on a moonlit summer's eve, and women in the holy glow of motherhood. Old men gazing silently through the twilight into the beyond. Oh God, give me the words to make my dream children live. And give yourselves a big round of applause. So then, after we've done that together, we go back to the task. And we remind them, just like we did in this exercise with Joseph Seaman Cotter's poem, you're going to do the same. You're going to find 3 words, 3 ideas, or 3 sections, or 3 gestures within what you've just written. And you're going to put movements to them just like we did with Joseph Seaman Cotter. And as we did, it doesn't have to be a complicated movement. It can be as simple as wiping sweat off your brow to communicate tiredness, or like we did, calling to the creator to feel all of that joy and all of that love. So super simple gestures. You're going to have 5 minutes. Go. Again, you'll notice time limits are very important because it gives them, especially in an exercise with movement, a deadline. And if that really nervous individual is sitting there and doesn't want to move, when they hear 5 minutes, they're like, okay, well, it's going to be over soon. If we're in person, what I'll do is I'll walk around and I'll ask if people need help. Usually, if they are nervous about moving, they'll start moving. Or if they truly need inspiration to get started, we can do it together. Usually, people will participate in this exercise given all of the steps we've gone through to get here. Then, once the 5 minutes is up, and we'll check in just like we did with the poetry writing, tell them they have a minute left, so rehearse it. Make sure you rehearse it so that you know what your movements are. And then when the 5 minutes is up, we ask them to find a partner. Because what's going to happen is the partner that they select is going to read their poem while they do their movement. And just like before, we ask for reflections after they share. One of the wonderful things that we've seen, particularly in doing these workshops in where you are, albeit virtually, with participants in regions like Yos and Abuja and other places, is that the movement even inspires more people to reflect. When they see someone become so vulnerable as to show not only what they've written, what their story is, but movement along with it, the support of finding a reflection within yourself just to support the person who's being so vulnerable is really important. And it really builds that community. And that's what we want. We want everybody to feel like they've been friends forever and they can share whatever they want with each other. It doesn't happen all the time. And again, it's a lofty goal, but that's what we're going for. And usually we have very, very, very positive results. And again, this is just one component of a curriculum of movement workshops that we have. And this is a very easy one to get involved with. We have ones that are more leaning towards what Cisco might recognize as like a choreographic task or improvisational tool. Like we'll do something called mirroring, where we will have 2 people stand across from each other and they'll copy each other's movements. One person will be the leader, one person will be the follower, and they'll just follow along. We'll do weight bearing exercises where one person will get down, another person will share weight. And as dancers, these are just movement creation tools, but when you use them within workshops, they become a little bit stronger in kind of trust building exercises and in looking and seeing others and recognizing others, to very personal self-affirmation and empowerment exercises as well. So thank you for moving with me. Thank you for creating with me. I am open to just about any question you might have. I'm gonna stop sharing if I can. Hold on.
Thank you very
Oof.
much, Mr. Roman. I'm sure everyone enjoyed that because it was blissful. So I was just rounding off on my own poem because I thought we were actually going to do this here right now, the right segment to just drop our poems. So I just did that in the chat section right now. And I can see that there's a question. So if you have any question, I would like you to drop your question. So, alright. Akiachibo is asking, how long does an average workshop or session last?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. They can last as short. We like a typical workshop to last about an hour. That we can get through about 2 or 3 exercises in an hour. However, like we were doing here during the residency in New Mexico in the US, we had a week-long series of workshops that were each an hour each, and we ran it for 5 days. So then we could really develop the tasks, the creative energies, and we could point towards a larger sharing of these creations that usually make people pretty inspired. Some veterans aren't apt to share what they've created, but a lot of veterans really want to share what they want to tell the public. And so often these workshops will lead to a public performance like we're doing with this one. And I will, if you want to see kind of a culminating event of what we're doing, I'll drop a link into the chat that you can check out. Hopefully you can join it from West Africa. And I apologize in advance if you cannot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norman. Does any other person have a question? Mr. Norman? So I was just making sure that everyone can actually put their questions out there before I go, so I don't take up spotlight from anyone. So for me, I would like to know, imagine if people are struggling with a low sense of self-worth or self-esteem. Can this storytelling be used in such in an expressive way? Because I know it did a lot for me to actually like be present and hope. So can this storytelling be used in an expressive way to act it out, not just read the poem and demonstrate? Can it be used to act with the entire emotion? Something like a drama, the way people in drama would express it, can it be used also?
So yes. One of the things that we really love to do, and again, these workshop components are just showing you several components of a whole workshop we have. Like you alluded to, the best product of one of these workshops is a theatrical event that is created out of the workshop that communicates stories about these veterans. we had a workshop that we ran in New York City in 2018. And we had one veteran who had served on an aircraft carrier. If you don't know what an aircraft carrier is, it's a large ship that is huge, and they have airplanes on top that take off and land. And so he had worked on this, and what he was communicating is that a lot of his movements were from his work on the flight deck, and he wanted to communicate that a lot of the public, especially in the United States, thinks that working on an aircraft carrier is a safe and easy job and very prestigious. And he wanted to tell people that through movement, that it was actually very, very dangerous, because you could get blown over the side by jet wash, or knocked over by a piece of equipment, or the jets, the jet burners on the back of the jet to make them fly often injured people as well. And so there's a lot of stories that can be told through movement, and movement that's taken from actual service. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, actually helps a lot, because I think I'm going to really invite this in one of my seminars in the future, because I'm a confidence coach, and I was just thinking people that have low self-esteem, wouldn't it be awesome if they could tell their stories and express this, and it's going to help them build their confidence, because they're going to be doing this authentically and unapologetically. So thank you very much, because I can say that this session has actually impacted me. And I hope I'm not the only one who enjoyed this, because I know Miss Eke was also there with us doing the movements. If you are able to do the movements, if you are able to join us in the movement, how did you feel? I would like to hear from another person's perspective. How was it?
You're asking the participants, right? Everyone else on the call.
Yes.
If you couldn't hear the question, it's how did you feel during the movement? How did you feel creating?
I felt like a child again. It felt interesting, and I think it's something that anybody can relate to. You don't have to think too much. You don't have to have any prior experience. I felt happy and like a child again.
Anyone else?
I felt quite good. I love poetry. I always have. And when you started off with your statement of you tried to make them feel relaxed by asking them to write, it piqued my interest. So when you got to the point of us having to move, I also felt flutters. I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? And as you told us to move through each stanzas, I saw myself observing the words as well as the movement. I could see the connection in them. And it made me see more beauty in the combination of both. So next with them, that was a wonderful session, really. I loved every bit of it. And I really, I wouldn't say I have questions, but I just wondered, can this be done more frequently? Can I participate more often?
So I just shared in the
Thank you.
I just shared in the chat the event page for the culminating events that we're doing this weekend. And you're welcome to join those. There's a suggested donation, but don't feel compelled to donate. You can attend with no charge. If you look at our website, that is where the event page is. On our up next page, we usually have invites for classes and workshops. And so I would just ask you to keep an eye on that page or on our Instagram page for next workshops that we're hosting. And we'll let you know. Definitely, you can participate.
Can I just ask, I've just thought of a question. I'm assuming that you may at some point have people who may not, I'm not sure whether this would happen or not, correct me if it doesn't, but people who may not have English as a first language, or who may not be as literate as, you know, could they, so how would they then participate in the sort of the written aspect of the poetry?
There's two ways. The first way is to invite them to write a poem in their own language. Often, expression is expression at the end of the day. And this is the perfect workshop for that. Because if they write their poem in their own language and then create movement to the ideas in their poem, the listeners, if they don't know that language, might actually connect with the movement that they're doing. The second way is, if they're not that literate, to invite them to recopy the poem, to work with a neighbor, or to, you know, often if we tour, I'll have another facilitator with me, and we can have one facilitator work on one-on-one with an individual to help them express what they want to express. Not to push them to do that, but to help them along.
Okay, thank you.
Is that everyone? Right, I think that was everyone. Thank you, Mr. Roman. I think you've heard it all. Everyone enjoyed this session. We are feeling like children again. We just want to go out and express ourselves more and